Hi friends, hope you're having a lovely day today. Welcome back to another episode of the Red Photo Podcast, second podcast that's being video broadcasted to live public television in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm very excited. So in the spirit of Omaha, we're going to talk about my photos today and just a little bit and break down a couple of them that I've taken recently and why, why they're amazing. Because let's be honest. But so in the Salt Lake Valley at the moment, it's we're kind of in this weird limbo state of weather. There's this spot that we're in, which is I don't know what to call this season. We're in some weird new season, and apparently this happens every year in the Salt Lake Valley, where it's kind of cold, but it's kind of warm, but there's spring, and then like I saw a bee the other day, but then last night it just snowed. There was a blizzard for some reason, and I'm sorry, the night before last night, I think, it snowed. Random blizzard. Snow's all gone now, pretty much, except for on the mountains. It hangs around the mountains. We have some very tall mountains around here, and it's just kind of hanging out. I almost want to turn my camera to show you the mountain, but all you would see is a door and a dog. So I was driving home from Starbucks. Well, so first off, I go into Starbucks to get activities done, such as lewd conduct, nudity, lewd nudity, robberies, eating the popcorn that they have in the bags that you can buy there without paying, that sort of activity. And then also a little bit of sitting at the table and getting some things done. And, so I got some things done. And when I got there, it was not snowing. It was very windy. All the snow that happens here is predated by some crazy wind action. And then that generally is a good teller that you're about to get some snow. So there was wind, it was a little bit rainy, and then all of a sudden I'm like sitting there, and then it's just downpour as I'm in Starbucks. And once I come out, there's a good half an acre of snow on the ground, and so I had to get back in my car and drive home. It's about a 2-minute drive from the Starbucks, and my window had not properly sort of defrosted yet, if you will. There was, and on the side, there was snow on the side of my car, which is apparently illegal. You're supposed to clear all your windows, but it was just a little drive home. I cleared off the back. We have a snow scraper thing, or a brush. I cleared off the back window. I cleared off the front window, which is essential, but the side windows were kind of not cleared off, and I had to roll down the window a little bit as I was driving. But I had a moment of terror when I got on the road and realized I couldn't see anything. There was just snow coming at me, and it was like it was horrifying. And so I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden there's a median coming at me. I was like, I need to get to the right. Let's just go right. That's probably a good idea. I made it home. It wasn't too far of a drive, but if it was any longer, I may have hit some small children or antelope, if you will. There are also thousands and thousands of antelopes just in the street at any given time here in the Salt Lake Valley. We do have an antelope island, there's actually buffalo there. I've yet to see antelope. I don't know if it's just shaped like an antelope, but there's buffalo that it's confusing. Also, speaking of Starbucks and coffee, I am a coffee connoisseur, entrepreneur, and I love iced coffee. That's I tell people 80% of my intake of any sort of substance is iced coffee. The other is water. That's the other 15% water, 5% almonds. So it's a pretty crazy ratio going on, and I'm probably gonna die soon. But it's an experiment. But a really good iced coffee to try is, so, we all know about cold brew. Cold brew is fantastic. I love a good cold brew. But another thing that's fantastic, if you haven't heard of it, or you've probably heard of it, but you haven't tried it, is nitro cold brew. And I want to read to you the way in which a nitro cold brew iced coffee is made. Let's see. This is the best iced coffee you will drink all summer, says this article with a gif of candles burning and a cold brew sitting in front of the candles majestically. If that does not make you want nitro cold brew, I'm going to adjust my mic here. If that does not make you want nitro cold brew, you you don't have a soul. Nearly 4 years ago, the Queen's Kickshaw, a coffee hub in Astoria, was installing its draft system. A barista got mad at owner Ben Sandler. He was like, "Ben, we've got to figure out something about this iced coffee situation. It's everywhere." Like, the coffee was all over the floor. That's what I get from that. I'm not sure what that means. Sandler recalls, and I said, "Why don't we just push it through the draft system? That'd make it easier for you, huh?" Then we looked at each other and went, "That's a really good idea." So they tried it. And so basically, nitro iced coffee, as according to this article, is, let's see, draft nitro. It's coffee infused with nitrogen, hence the term nitro cold brew. And it's delicious. I mean, it is a unique take on coffee. It's fantastic. So I would encourage you to check that out. I also want to give some love. I also want to give some love to a specific creator that I mentioned on Instagram recently. This has nothing to do with coffee. That was just a hard transition. That was violent. I'm sorry if your neck hurts. Dan Tom is a fantastic landscape photographer. He has some very sort of lively, bright, brilliant, well-composed work, lots of ocean shots. I'd encourage you to check him out on Instagram, Dan Tom. And that is the end of the recommendations for today on this episode of the Red Photo Podcast. Now it's all about me. So I want to talk about a couple of photos, and if you're watching, you'll see these photos. If you're listening, you will hear these photos. I'll do my best to be as descriptive as humanly possible to give you a beautiful visual representation of the photos that I'm speaking about. So the first photo that I want to take a look at and sort of unpack and why it's an interesting photo is this one I took in Park City, Utah recently. If you don't know, Park City is a fantastically eclectic sort of town. It's where the Sundance Film Festival takes place, and it's a ski resort town. So you can literally ski. You can hop on the chairlift, go up the mountain, come down a black diamond, do a couple backflips, and ski directly into the window of your house, basically. It's that sort of situation, and it's a beautiful town. These are the types of towns that I would encourage you, even if you're a street photographer like moi, I would encourage you to get into these towns that are a little, they're not urban hub center places. They're very eclectic, little lively towns. A lot of times these towns have very interesting people, a lot of people moving around. It's not just people in suits. It's an interesting dynamic. And this is no exception to that. So the photo is of sort of a neighborhood kind of wrapping around this road, and I'm angled up, and at the bottom you have these three skiers walking up the hill with their skis, and then if you look up the mountain, you'll see clumps of skiers coming down a hill in the distance. And there are, sort of some power lines and trees covering the hillside, top, mouth, and it's sort of it's a busy photo in terms of elements, but it is and snow everywhere, obviously. It's a busy photo in terms of elements, but it's organized in a very sort of thoughtful way because I'm great. So, coffee. So what is interesting about this photo is, first of all, you have this sense of compression that comes from the lens that I used, which was a longer lens, which was my 70 to 300 millimeter lens. And I zoomed in, pretty tight, and I was on the main, I think I was on Main Street looking up the hill at these guys walking up the hill, and that was my first interest. And I got hair in my mouth. What's the problem when you have long hair? It kind of gets everywhere. That didn't come off my head though. That's strange. What is that? That's a dog hair. That's what it is. Yep. Okay. So there's this sort of I have elements that are stacked in a very interesting way in this photo. And also this compression helps kind of aid the effect of things feeling like they're sort of on top of each other, things feeling like they're all kind of bunched up together, and it feels quite nice the way that it's done. And so what's interesting about the way that this photo is laid out, and what makes it not be just a clump of insanity, is, which it can easily happen with photos like this, is the way the elements are positioned. So I think points of interest are extremely important in laying out photos. You can look at a scene and you see it differently than it may be represented in a photo if you don't know what you're doing. You may see these points of interest. Oh, that's an interesting person there, but maybe that point of interest, there's like 5 people behind that person, so it just wouldn't work compositionally. You can't single them out and make them into something compelling. So sometimes those photos just don't work. The way that it worked here is you have a group of 3 people, and 3 is a very compelling number when it comes to photography. Anytime you can find just a nice group of 3 people that are, similar or somewhat different, but they're separated, 3s are fantastic. It's like a triangle. It's symmetry. It's the endoplasmic cytoplasm of the organic, thought process. And that's a good thing, right? I think we'd all agree that that's a good thing. And what I did here is that you have these 3 skiers walking up the hill. They have the skis on their shoulders, which I would argue is kind of the most interesting part of the photo. You can see them making their way up the hill to the ski slope, and if you move your eye up the slope, there's this little patch of open slope where these skiers are coming down, also in groups of 3, which I realized as I was preparing this podcast. I realized that they are also in groups of 3. And really, it makes it into a really interesting dynamic. And I don't think I even meant to do that. I think it's just snapped as many photos as I could. I tried to, organize the elements into a very compelling package, and this is what you get. It's cool because it provides this sense of direction with these people walking up the hill. You can look at this and go, oh, they're walking up to the slope. They're going to go ski. It tells a story. It makes the photo into something that steps outside the still frame. It's a story that steps outside the moment that is being captured. You can create a narrative. You can see them coming down that hill, 5 minutes later. And so also there's a dramatic sense of depth here because of the way that the photo is compressed, because of the overall angle, and I'm still trying to figure out all of the elements that come together that make it into what it is. I mean, these are good photos to study for that reason, because you can't always, sometimes it's difficult to break these photos down into bite-size takeaways, because it's heavily dynamic. But that's what I try to do. I just sit here and look at these photos and go, why does this work? Why is this interesting? Why do I freaking love this? That's what I always say. This is an example of where I generally try to move a little bit towards a minimalistic approach to my backgrounds and my subjects and how things are balanced. This time I decided to actually go in a sort of a maximalism kind of way, or at least the end result is sort of a maximalized photo where you have 1,000 elements. These are incredibly hard photos to pull off, and I take many a photo that has this sort of layout of elements that does not work out. These are very hard photos, and this is why you see. This is why it's so special when you see these very iconic photos of groups of 50, 100 people in some sort of public scene, Grand Central Station, whatever, and everything feels so poetic. Is because that's hard to do. It takes time and patience and practice. You cannot underestimate the patience of the process and being okay with the process and enjoying the process. So that's that photo. I think that's, we're going to move on to the next one. The next photo is, this is just a portrait I took very recently of a girl in downtown Salt Lake City. She was very intriguing, and so I wanted to just take a portrait. And I had, what did I have? I think I had the long lens in this case as well, because I was trying to get up on some buildings and take some shots down onto the street, which was not a gigantic success, but I did get this from it and a couple other interesting photos. So a couple of things that I think are of note with this entire situation, the interaction that happened, and the photo that was the end result of this interaction. The first thing was, it's so nice when you can find a conversation with somebody that really flows well, and you guys have a good sort of synergy together and symbiosis. She actually helped me find the background for this photo. I took a second. I looked around. I was like, "Are you walking this way? Okay, let's figure out where we can put you." And she was like, "What about over there?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." So we walked over there. We tried a background. Worked out fantastic. So thank you. Her expression here is something that was. What I like about this is an expression that you can't go wrong with. She was a very sort of uppity, happy person. And there's really nothing like a good, authentic smile in a photo. As much as we try to do these crazy things, and you have I'm going to do this, especially for the video, you guys will have to watch later. You have the Instagram models doing this sort of thing. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to Trader Joe's. This is normal. I'm just going to get some Trader Joe's samples. Get some avocado for my guac. Just walking down the street. This is my average routine. I like natural things. And, and this was a very natural, authentic, genuine expression. She had a fantastic smile. One thing I told her to do, which is a technique as old as time. Just watch Beauty and the Beast. Sorry, I had to add that. I had to insert that there. A technique as old as time that I used was I told her to drop her chin. This will work wonders. This will change your photos. If you have not tried this yet with your street portraits, and when you're actually interacting with a person, obviously with Canon's, like, "Hey, drop your chin." What? Drop your chin. If you're interacting with the person, telling them to just do this, just drop their head down a little bit is a really interesting way to make the expression more unique, but also feel very natural. So I would encourage the chin drop. One thing that is interesting about this photo as well is the colors are very simple. And I just posted a video recently about the portrait work of Steve McCurry, who his portraits are very minimalistic in a lot of examples, and his colors that he uses are very simple. You have maybe you'll have a contrasting color for the background to the subject who's in the subject who's in the foreground, and you'll have them wearing a couple of colors, and it's a natural thing for them that they would be wearing those colors. I would believe. I don't think he's posing these people's outfits in Afghanistan, and so they have this very simple quality to them, but not simple to create. And I think this is an example of that, where they're sort of three predominant colors. You have a sort of a brighter or a darker brown. You have the black hair, or the in this case black hair. The hair is probably not literally black, but in this case you have the black hair, and then her shirt is black as well, like jet black. So it actually like is a void of a shirt, and it's very minimalistic, and this provides for a very pleasing photo in the end. Another thing that, nope, that was it. Oh, well, the background's very bright, which sort of matches her demeanor, her happiness. You know, if I had some sort of horrifying forest behind her, this photo wouldn't make any sense. The very bright stone that's happening behind her, you know, it makes the photo make sense. And a lot of times you don't know why these photos work until after the fact. You're like, this is cool, but you're not going through the process in your mind consciously. This is why practicing, so much of photography is a very subconscious art, and that's pretty amazing when you really think about it. When you really think about how much your brain does for you that you're not objectively taking part in, when you're going, that just feels nice for some reason. Let me do that. This is why I think people who are just starting don't have this same muscle that we have, photographers who are experienced. They don't have this. They have an idea of what they would like to create, but they don't have the same sort of muscle memory to create an actual compelling photo. You can look at their photo and go, I see what you were trying to do there, but that didn't really work out. Side note, if you're watching the video, I have a black monitor right here. It would be nice if there was some sort of landscape on it, but I don't have a cord to hook my new laptop up to it yet. So that's why it's just this, it's just it's just being itself over here. Just, being a goofball. Okay, the next photo that I want to look at, talk about just a tad, is one I captured very recently of a bicyclist coming down a beautiful sort of avenue that runs down the east, some side of the valley, and you can see all across the valley. It's a beautiful road. And if you ever, it's called Wasatch Avenue, Boulevard, something like that. Beautiful road. So what I did in this case was I got out when the light was very compelling. This photo, hands down, would not have worked without very intriguing light. And I waited for a bicyclist to come by. I hid on the side of like a 4-lane highway sort of situation. There was a parking lot because people will go up, climb up the mountain right here. So this is a popular area, but I was hiding out on the side of a highway and waiting for a bicyclist to come by because they come by frequently. And so the photo, just to break it down, is of beautiful sun. The sun's going down on the other side of the valley. You can see it's very shadowy scene. In the foreground, you have these blades of grass coming up that are lit by that sun, so they're a little nice warm lighting to them. As you move down into the photo, you see the bicyclist coming down the road. The road is very dark, and the bicyclist has these little peaks of light happening on his face and on his clothing, on his legs. And then in the background, you can see 2 power lines that are sort of symmetrically balanced on either side of the photo with, or power poles with lines going down, connecting them together. And then you can see the valley in the distance, which is just lit by the oncoming sunset in beautiful fashion. So this is a very dynamic photo in terms of lighting, and I think it's what makes it come together. I think that if I shot this at noon, this photo would pretty much have not worked at all. It would not have been interesting. And the shooting and the lighting that I did created this very immersive sense of depth to the photo. And every bit of this photo has I guess yeah, it has a depth to it. The mountains are saying hello in the distance. The grass is saying hello in the foreground. It's all separated. This is segmented. It's layered. It's element stacking, right? And it all sort of has its place in the photo. The power lines here, I think without them, I just picture a lot. What I like to do in my photos is I like to picture myself actually cutting elements out of the photos, as people like to do with Photoshop. Actually cutting those elements out and thinking about would this photo be more or less compelling without those elements? Does this add or take away from the photo? What does this mean? And people generally like to get rid of power lines for some odd reason. I think they're actually quite fantastic if you use them in a very intentional way. In this case, I mean, you have lines of like these dark lines running through the sky. Like, you don't get that with just anything. It can be used to dramatic effect. I think having the poles, one on the right side, one on the left side, creating, once again, this sense of immersive depth, and then the lines connecting the two together makes for a very pleasing effect here. I'm amazing. The next photo that I want to take a look at is one that I captured earlier on this year, and when the snow was really starting to take effect and come in. And it's of a couple of snowboarders at my apartment complex right next to the dog park. And what they have done in this photo is there's one guy standing on the side of a picnic table, lifting the picnic table up to a sort of like a 45-degree angle. Then you have another snowboarder who is grinding said picnic table, and so it's this sort of camaraderie of friendship and hey bro, I want to grind that picnic table. Will you lift it up for me? Yeah, bro, let's do it. Yeah, okay. It's that sort of thing. And so I was my wife was down by the dog park walking our dog, and she was like, dude, you got to come downstairs and you got to take some photos of these guys. They're jumping off crap. They're snowboarding. It's good time. And so I went down there and I took my 50 millimeter, I think it was 50 millimeter lens, dropped it to 1.8 or 2.8. It was very dark. It was nighttime. Dropped it down, pushed my ISO up. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Don't you be scared. Don't be scared of grain. I pushed it way up. I mean, I think it was at 32 or 6400 here. And what made this photo work, an interesting thing about this photo was, so I told him, keep jumping off this thing. I'm going to find some interesting angles. And so they start jumping off stuff. I took a couple shots. I think they didn't sort of work. This was the main shot that I actually felt good about. And one thing that's interesting about the lighting here is I actually used my iPhone to for the flashlight on the iPhone to light the foreground, because this was dark. I mean, this was a very dark part of a field. And so my wife, I gave her, I think we had either one or two iPhones, like holding it up, shooting light at the patrons. And what happens is you have this very blue kind of spotlight effect happening on the people, which I actually think worked out really well. So this is very dramatic lighting, very interesting. In the background, you can see the apartment buildings and the warm lighting there, which is a nice accent to the cool lighting that's happening in the foreground. Coffee. And the expression that I captured here, what I tried to do was I wanted to get in front of them. I think we could argue that if I shot this from the side, you wouldn't be able to see the guy holding up the table. Everything would have kind of, you maybe would have seen his face in the background and then the snowboard, going past his head. It just wouldn't have been interesting. Having them separated like this and being able to see both of them doing their thing and seeing their faces made this photo really work. This was sort of this was sort of this was a tough situation, and so it took a lot of thoughtful weirdness to try to get the photo that I captured here, which is it's not a clean photo. It's a very it's a photo that a lot of people I think would reject in their editing, but I like these weird sort of compositions, so I enjoyed it. Having a sense of motion here really helped out too. You can see the snowboarder shooting across the top of the picnic table, and overall it turned into a very intriguing photo, and it's an example of always having your camera ready to go. Next photo. So this is a photo. This is, I think, the final. Yeah, this will be the final one we talk about today. How long have we been going? 30 minutes. Record. Woo! This next photo is one I captured before I moved. I guess it was probably 6 months ago now. I forget. I was in downtown of the old city where I used to live, the beautiful city of Augusta, Georgia. There's it's a bit of a it's not what I would call a lively city. If you actually go back into the 50s or 40s, somewhere around there, and you look at old pictures of this town, I mean, it looked like Vegas. It was like it was hopping. Nowadays there are a lot of abandoned buildings, tall buildings. I mean, these are, they're 30-story buildings in this area, but almost nobody walking around. It's a very strange city, but a very interesting. A lot of fantastic people there. So I was capturing. I came across this chess match between two guys and the third guy sitting on the side, and I wanted to take photos of them going about their thing. And one interesting thing about the scene was, so first of all, I'll explain the photo. It's a picture of a guy. So you see over the shoulder of one guy shooting at another guy over the chess table. He's sitting there. He has this very focused look on his face, his fingers over his mouth, just kind of very intensely postulating about whatever his next move will be or what he's going to have for dinner that night. But that would be kind of out of place in this situation. So, but like I said, shooting over the shoulder of the opponent, so you can kind of. So, I forget where I was before that. Where's that? Oh yeah, one interesting thing about the scene was when I asked, if I could take their photo, just kind of hover around, and they said yes. But other than that, it was almost silent. This scene, they were so focused, they were so into this. It was an example of kind of a social situation where nobody felt like they needed to talk. It was a very comfortable sort of intensive. You're going down sort of situation, and the reason this photo works is, of course, first off, because of light, having a nice soft but at the same time directed beam of light hitting the side of his face. Made for an intriguing sort of comfortable type of lighting in this situation. Very warm lighting. The angle, I decided to get down low on his level, shoot straight at him, which provided for this very cinematic effect. If you want your photos to look like movies, the first thing to do is one, get a pretty long lens and maybe, shoot at f2.8 or so if you can. But get a longer lens. That's a really good way to create a very cinematic effect. And then get down on the level of the person that you're shooting. That is the first two steps of if you want your photos to feel very sort of moody, cinematic, immersive in that sense. So I did that, and then the elements that I stacked together here, I think make it work together. Like I said, you have the guy's shoulder on the left, and then you have the chess table, and you can see all the pieces scattered about in strategic fashion, and then you see the guy who is in deep thought about. I'm going to share this photo again. I really like this photo. He's in deep thought about his next move. And the expression is what makes this photo work. If he was just sitting there, the photo would have been a tenth of how compelling it is. So with that said, that's all I have for today. These are my photos. I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear your feedback. feel free to get in touch with me on the places. And go try some nitro cold brew. It's really good. And if you don't like black coffee, what I would encourage you to do, if you want to drink black coffee, is drink it. Well, so there are two methods. This is the coffee power hour here. I'm here to bring you value, guys. There are two methods. The first one is to go to Starbucks, get your normal thing. If you get a white mocha, for example, go there and you will get, 5 pumps of white mocha in your coffee. Cut back. Go down to 3 and 2. Get yourself off of this sugar need. And then go to a latte. Get the sugar out. Latte. And it will be weird. And then get rid of the milk. And then for a week straight, drink black coffee, and I am 80% sure, if it's good coffee. Now, don't even begin with Folgers. Go find some good coffee and drink it for a week straight, and you will be used to it, and you'll start to like it. I had so many people, you put so much crap in you put freaking French vanilla creamer, there's like cyanide and chemicals in there. Don't do that. It's so much better for you to drink black coffee. Okay, with that said, thank you for listening. I hope you have a lovely day. You can find me at James the Red on Instagram, James the Red on Twitter, and Red Photo on YouTube. Goodbye.